Hey guys, Marcus Brown here, Shop Talk Round 2. Today, we're going to talk about a couple things. Number one, we're going to talk about what a stacked position actually is. We had a lot of people, or a few people ask anyway, what does stacked mean? How I want to approach it is I want to talk about stacked from a very overall, very basic standpoint, something that can be utilized in any sport. Because stacked is a very universal position, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. After that, we're going to go and we're going to try to take a little more specific look at that stacked position in a water ski position with a handle leaning against a pole. First, we're going to talk about stacked. Okay, I've got two friends here. One's name is stacked and the other is not stacked. Very simple, but you get the point. I want you to zero in on this pelvic region here. I've kind of drawn a simple representation of the pelvis. You can see that it's got a certain angle here to be compared to this not stacked position. So here you can see normal spine has a little bit of lumbar curvature and a little bit of thoracic curvature. You can see over here, it looks really, really bad. This is exaggerated, but let's not confuse exaggeration with truth, okay? Because this is a true scenario of what happens to a lot of people, myself included. So you see in the stacked situation, you have the pelvis is right over your feet. Your hips are right over your feet. We know that. That's a great position to be in. The head is also right over the pelvis. Everything is in alignment, head to feet. But what you'll notice is there's a normal amount of curvature through this lumbar region and thoracic region. Okay, that's good. Your pelvis, as I've drawn it, it's very simple. It's lined up such that you have a very normal amount of spinal curvature in your low back, which a lot of people, that's where we have problems. Let's look at this guy. He's not doing too good. Let's talk about why. Look at the pelvis. This angle, if we project that angle out relative to this pelvic angle, you can see this is a lot steeper angle. So what that means is this guy's pelvis, it's basically tipped forward. What does that do to his spine? Well, you see here the lumbar spine imparts a lot more curvature on that lumbar spine. To compensate for that, the reason that he's got that curvature is because he's compensating by trying to bring the rest of his spine and his head and his shoulders and everything right over his feet and right over his hips. So what that does is that puts this really weird kink in this lumbar region. And then what happens is, like I talked about last time, is you have something that's bent and you put load on it, it's just going to want to bend more. In engineering, if you have a slender column, you want to keep that thing really, really straight because that's how it's designed to take a load. Anytime you bend that column, the more you bend that thing, well, that's not supposed to happen, but the more you bend the slender column, the more likely it is to break. And that's what's happening here. So let's look at what's actually causing this guy's pelvis to rotate forward. You got a lot of muscle attaching up front. We're all familiar with quads. We're all familiar with hip flexors. That's all the stuff up front. So let's represent that with just one rubber band like that. And that thing is pulling in that direction. Now in the back, we have corresponding attachments that create tension in the back as well. Let's call those your glutes, hamstrings, all that other stuff. We're gonna represent that by another, I don't know, let's call it a rubber band, okay? Because it's a very simple representation. Now, what do you think is going on in this situation? If this band up front gets shortened or gets tighter, or overpowers this band in the back, you can see how this is going to slowly over time tip forward, and that takes that spine and puts it in a compromised position. Same in the back, just the opposite. If these muscles back here aren't built up, aren't strengthened, aren't activated, then they tend to be overpowered by everything in the front. So you tend to have a lack of stabilization in your glutes or your hamstring region. That's kind of the simple version of stacked versus unstacked, looking at it from a lumbar, low back approach. So talking about what the low back and what your body is designed to do. It's designed to be stacked and to be strong when the skeleton is in alignment. Here's your back, representation of your back in alignment. A simple column, something you see, I don't know if you went to Greece or if you're in your backyard looking out and there's a porch column holding your back porch up. You have a load coming through it like this. That's how it's designed to handle a load. It's pretty strong in that position. Now, here's a pre-bent, hypothetical column. You would never design one like this, and you can kind of see why. If you have this same axial load like this, here's the ground down here. Common sense, we can all kind of guess that this thing is going to want to bulge out that way. And this thing, ultimately, if you put enough load on, it's going to break. Now, that's what's happening over here in this not stacked position. That's why you're very compromised when you have the stripper butt like we talked about, when you're not in alignment, when your glutes can't activate, when your core can't activate. Now what I want to do is go talk about what this looks like on the actual water ski. So that stacked position that we just looked at on the whiteboard, what does that look like on a ski or actually in a pulling position? I have here some rubber bands, just kind of simulates a little bit more real life feel instead of this static rope that we normally use when we pull on the handle. Real quick, Stack position on a water ski should be the most efficient position. That's the goal. That's where we want to be. And on the onside pull, I'm right foot forward. We're right here. Hips are over feet, shoulders over hips. Now, what's very important is that we're not getting here by arching our back, inducing more lumbar curvature like we talked about than we need. I've heard a lot about people saying hips up, shoulders back. I don't know if any of you deadlift. When people deadlift, at the top of the deadlift, they finish everything out. They tend to finish here. Now, I'm not an expert in human movement, but I'm an engineer, and I understand that anytime you do this under load, you're just taking your spine and bending it and maintaining that load on it. Just like on a water ski, when somebody says hips up, shoulders back, that person's gonna end up arching their back, and they're gonna end up with back problems at some point down the road. You do not wanna do that. You want your glutes to be on. Last Shop Talk, when we talked about stretching those hip flexors, you activate your glutes to help induce that stretch in the front of your hip socket. It's the same thing on a ski, or same thing walking, same thing doing whatever activity you're doing. You want your glutes to be activated, because what that does is that balances out your pelvis, right? That keeps the pelvis from tipping forward and having that stripper butt. Keep the glutes on to keep your tail tucked, like in yoga, and to keep everything in alignment. It's the same thing you want to do on your water ski. Now, people get confused, open to the boat, close to the boat. Real quick, I didn't want to talk about it, but I'm going to. Here's the deal. Open to the boat very simply allows you to stay more centered and balanced and actually dynamically moving forward on your ski. Why? Because if you're not open to the boat, you're here. And if you're here, you tend to want to take this line of action from the boat, this force vector from the boat, which if you're closed is going through your lead shoulder. You tend to want to take that and get it right over the center of your feet. If you get in this closed position, you end up shifting back so that this force vector, meaning your lead shoulder attachment point to the boat, ends up being closer to your feet. By opening up, it allows you to get the force vector. Now it's not on the lead part of your body, the force vector is through the center of your body. Theoretically, if you're 50-50 on your arms, okay? Which allows you to create more center of mass shift in the direction you want to go, which allows you then to not have to pull so hard to get going to the other side faster. It's more efficient. It's actually creating acceleration with less load. So that's why we're open to the boat. It's anatomically the best way to accelerate. Now, you try whatever you want, but I guarantee if you try skiing open to the boat, you're gonna ski longer sets, easier passes, and you're gonna ski more buoys. Now, offside cut. One thing about open to the boat on your offside. I'm gonna go back on what we've been talking about for years, which is this. If you are not mobile enough in this back hip, either hip, but this back hip especially, you should not be forcing yourself to open to the boat and then take a huge load from the boat or take any load from the boat in this position. What happens is my spine's twisted. My spine's twisted and I'm taking a load. Bad. Don't do that. Number one thing, if you aren't working on getting more mobile in your hips and opening up these hip flexors so that on your offside cut, you can open your hips to the boat and your whole upper body from the waist up can be one unit with no spinal rotation, then you should not be opening up your shoulders. Whatever you can tolerate with your hips opening up, that's where your shoulders should be. So if this is all you got, that's all you got. I don't know how else to say it, but it's more important to be able to ski longer and more years than to try to artificially open up to the boat because somebody told you to do that and ultimately screwing up your back. If your body's skeletally aligned as much as you can to your maximum potential at that given time, you're gonna ski better, you're gonna ski longer, you're gonna ski more buoys. And that's what we're all about. So I covered a lot. Sorry, I wanted to not cover so much and get in more depth, but I screwed up. Talked about stacked, we talked about why stacked works and what stacked is and why you don't wanna stay in this butt out position for the rest of your life. I'm working on it. I've had probably just as many back problems as the next guy out there. So it's a very touchy issue for me. And I just want people out there to know what I know because if we're smart and we're cautious and we play by the rules that our body's meant to be played by, I think we can ski a lot longer and a lot better. So that's it for today. Hopefully we'll do another one before another month passes. Thanks guys. See ya.